If you're on this journey to discover the totality of what's possible for you, as Adam said, this gives you a window. It doesn't
Hmm.
replace, it doesn't fix, it doesn't change who you are, but it gives you a glimpse of your potential. And then you have options to say, hey, do I want to stay in this way of being, in this way of action, this way of communication? Does it still serve me?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, oh, I could change. It give you that option, that clarity. In my mind, the way I articulate it is it doesn't let you escape reality. It's not an escaping thing. It's actually an access to hyper reality. It
Yeah.
lifts the veil so you can see, oh shit, here are my illusions. And at the end of ceremony, then you can pick and choose. Do I
Yes.
want to keep the illusions or not? That's the way I will articulate to anyone who's listening to this.
Yeah. I call that being put at choice. Once we can see the truth, we can still choose back into the old way. You get the choice of the red pill or the blue pill. And I think that's beautiful the way you said that it really allows us to pierce that veil a little bit. Ultimately, because I felt called in that direction. So that's one of the things that's interesting for me is the first phase of my life is really like head-based brilliance, learning to own my brilliance. And then second was heart-based brilliance. So coming out of my head, not figuring things out, but trusting that there's a brilliance inherent in the way I show up in the world. And then the third path has been like spiritual or spirit-based brilliance, which I'm just making these terms up. But for me, that is letting go of knowing how anything's going to turn out full stop and not needing to really know and trusting that there's some divine current that we're all flowing through and that trusting that I can be with whatever's showing up and I can handle myself no matter what happens. And then surrendering into that and living my life from that place. And so as I've stepped more and more into that third stage, that's just what started to show up. It was like, it wasn't even that I was like, oh, I want to follow a shamanic path. It was like a friend was like, hey, I'm working with a shaman and I think you should know them. And then we started to talk. And then this person was offering a course. And I was like, great, that's what I feel called to do. It was the way she described it was a course on, her words would be like, we're brainwashed. So we got to scrub all of that out so you can start to see the truth at a deeper level. Or unlearning might be an even better way to put it. It was like, boy, was it a hard course. It was a ton of reading and reading, not at all like reading a book. Like I'm reliable to do a lot of reading, got a background in law. This was like the sentences were all loopy and it was hard to follow. And the idea was to learn not to read something, but to be read by something. So I'd be reading this and then just notice what sticks, what starts to come forward and show up. And that was coupled with the notion of the medicine wheel and moving through from child to adolescent, where most of the West is stuck in her teachings, into adulthood, into elderhood, and that progression that we move through. And so a lot of that stuff is still integrating in my head. I'm still like, what do I do with this? Nothing. Let it sit for now.
So it almost sounds like a Japanese Cohen.
That's a great way to there's a perfect metaphor for it.
Yeah, the whole idea of a Cohen is it fucks with your rational mind. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So the classical one would be, what's the sound of one hand clapping? Rational mind is, what the fuck is that? It's trying to, again, Chinese finger puzzle and
Yes.
like, what the fuck is this? And it's similar to the Vipassana experience with your mind,
Yeah.
right? Like just, oh my God, I can't figure it out. And then finally, it couldn't take it any longer. And then it surrender. It gets what it's truly trying to communicate in between the lines. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly how it occurred.
Why? So you say you're called to, I think your words were head brilliance, heart brilliance, and spirit brilliance. By the way, I love that. You should write that down somewhere. Distinguish that for me one more time. So head would be to discipline them. Yeah, actually, I don't want to project. And
So
yeah,
head-based brilliance, like often most for brilliant people, we start even before that because we can't own our brilliance because we're trained by the world that like don't get good results. So it's good to be brilliant, but don't own it because then you're a nerd or you're arrogant or whatever. So then we're like, I'm smart, but I'm not that smart. We do all this weird caveating. So the first stage is like to own our head-based brilliance, to trust, no, I'm really smart. Like I can think good. I wouldn't say it that way. This is I can trust myself this way. And even though I might still feel like an imposter, there's a truth to the brilliance that I have. And then the next is heart-based brilliance, which is coming down out of our head, seeing the brilliance in everyone rather than seeing the stupidity. From head, we see a lot of stupidity in the world. And
Compassion and empathy. Yeah.
yes. And trusting my brilliance does not have to be something thought or intellectualized. So, like, I can start to trust that just by virtue of the way I naturally will show up in the world, that will be imbued with brilliance. And then the third stage is the spiritual or spirit-based brilliance, which is kind of learning to trust and surrender into the brilliance inherent in existence as a whole in the universe, and trusting, like, one, I can cope and be with and thrive in whatever shows up in front of me, and that there is a brilliance far beyond what I can conceive. And part of my role on this planet and this existence is to trust that and to let that carry us where it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the collective consciousness, the idea of destiny almost.
That's right. Yeah. Although without too much of a plan, because sometimes with destiny, we're like, there's no free will.